Hey, and welcome back to the Fully Booked Photographer podcast. And we're back as a foursome. We're back again, the four of us. It's been a while since the four of us have been together again, but how great it is to be back with these three amazing people. And what we want to talk about today is we're going to talk about shooting to sell, which is something that we see all the time. And, you know, Brad and his business, they've been through a journey to make sure that they managed to do that. And Jeanine is going through a really interesting process right now in that she's taken on two new photographers who are really good photographers, but she's discovering that they need guidance and help to actually photograph to sell. So I think, Jeanine, maybe we'll start with you on this one to understand, you know, when you're not shooting to sell, what typically happens, you know, in your experience with your new people, and you know, what did you? Because, you know, we mentioned with anything, you know, once we are fully familiar with doing something effectively, we become unconsciously competent, right? So we think everyone just knows how to do it because we just do it, right? So talk to us about this journey with your two new amazing people, by the way, who are absolutely doing great. But the journey of having to show, tell, sell, delegate to them this task of shooting to sell.
Yeah, Ronan, it's been really interesting. And I know Brad and I and you and Jonathan, we've talked before about the process of shooting accuracy. It's something that Brad has tracked in his studio for a long time with his dad in boudoir. And over the 17 years or so of running this studio, I didn't realize the journey I actually was on perfecting what we were shooting in the studio for the products we were going to sell. And it's little tweaks that have happened along the way. I knew pretty early on that if I didn't have in my mind what I wanted to sell, then what we were shooting in the studio wasn't going to really result in the sale that we wanted, right? Because we're presenting specific products. And if we didn't have the images necessary to create the products, then our sale usually was a little lackluster. And so I started trying to figure out what is it that parents would want to buy. And if we're going to talk, we have lots of different examples, but specifically we'll do first birthday because it's just the most recent and it's what I'm training the girls in mostly. But, you know, you can, and naturally, and it's interesting watching them do it. Because now I think this is probably what a lot of photographers do innately, not realizing it's probably hurting their sales, right? So even though I've worked with the two ladies in the studio, photographing sessions with me, giving them a checklist of the shots that we need to have, giving them contact sheets of these are the different scenes that we need, and this is what we need to get. They would still, once as a photographer, especially if you're a people person and you connect with your client and you connect with that baby, instinctively, when you're behind that camera and everything's going well, you just keep taking pictures. Baby's smiling, baby's happy, let's just keep taking pictures, right? But the problem is you can't sell. You can't sell a book, a collage, anything that requires different poses, different settings, different anything, if all you have is like 50 pictures of a baby smiling in one pose. And so this has been an interesting lesson to work with them on, trying to get them to understand why. Yes, I know that baby smiled, and that's amazing. And I'm so happy that you captured these beautiful portraits of this baby smiling and laughing at the camera, but I can only use 5 of them.
So Jeanine, so Jeanine, just to stop there just for a second, just to stop rewind. So what you're really telling us is that your new amazing recruits, right, who are great people and are learning the ropes, right, and who are good photographers, that they work forward, but you work backwards. You work with the end in mind.
I would say maybe forward versus in the moment.
Yeah, but either way, you
right.
have a strategy that you want your clients. You know your clients love to invest in a storybook of the baby's first birthday, along with a wall collage that goes with it. And you know that gives you the average that you're looking to get from those particular sessions. But you know you have to photograph to have the variety where the storybook makes sense, right, of that
Correct.
first birthday. While they haven't taught that through yet, despite your training around it, and their natural reaction when they have the happy expressions is to keep photographing that one piece. But now you're putting your client into, well, here's 50 photos and they're all pretty much the same. Which one do I want to buy? And one photograph or two photographs or three photographs aren't going to fill a storybook.
Correct. Yes. And, and it goes against us as photographers to stop something that's happening well to move on to something else. And so, and that's kind of the language I've been using with them. I'm like, listen, I know it's hard. That baby is smiling and laughing, and it goes against everything that you're instinctively thinking to say, you know what? I've got what I need here. We need to move. We're going to move on to something else. I have another idea. Let's do this. It's time to bring out the blue. Whatever it is that we're going to move on to next, it's time to do. And so I know Brad can speak about this in his boudoir sessions as well, that when they're shooting for collections. So it's very interesting. And so I think we've talked about this before in the Fully Booked Photographer. We've talked about it with our members about shooting for specific products. And I think until I've actually had to sit and train a photographer who has not ever thought about it before, I didn't realize what a difficult concept it was.
So you mentioned that the reason why it may be a difficult concept was because we're sort of looking for that expression, we have a happy baby, so keep photographing. What else, is there something else that's driving that other than the awareness that, well, we can't sell a product unless you've got the variety of photographs to tell the story?
Well, it's interesting. When we hear a lot of our other photographers say that their clients end up just saying, I just want all the digital images, I guarantee you it's because you have given them too many options in one scenario that they can't just decide. So you know what? Just don't make me decide. Can I just have these all? Just give me all the digitals. I'll figure it out later. Because you've frustrated them, right? And so it's interesting because when people, before they come in for a session, tell me that's what they want, the conversation we have is like, you don't really need that. Let me tell you, as a parent who has 36,000 phone pictures on her iPhone, I never look at those. I look at the ones I've favorited. When you actually trust us to help you tell your child's story, 20 to 30 favorite images you will actually look at. You will flip through. You will look at them on your wall. You will fall in love with those images in your baby every day you look at them. If you have a disc of 200 images that are meh, or they're cute, but you never really are drawn to look at them, that's just a waste of money and time, right? And so when it's twofold. So one, you're not doing your client any good. You're not providing them the experience and the memories that they are going to need for their family if you're just shooting the same thing for an hour. And even if they're good images, even if they're happy images, even if it's, and if this is a family, that's the same thing. You got to change up the poses, change up the looks, do something formal, do something casual. You need to give them a variety, tell a complete story. So that way they can have all of that from their session and then have a product that fits with that, whatever it may be. So for me, it's an album and a collage. For Brad, it's something different. For Jonathan, if he was a photographer in a studio, it could be something different. You need to figure out what that is and then figure out how you can shoot and structure your session to optimize for that.
So Jonathan, this is something we see outside of photography, that often people think value comes with quantity rather than quality. Do you agree with that statement, or have you any thoughts around that thought process, or any experiences you've had yourself in life where you may have thought that it was about quantity, not quality, or vice versa?
Yeah, a lot of the times people think more is better, and more is not necessarily better. More can be overwhelming. But the most important thing is that you're solving the problem that your client has with what you're selling them. So if you don't clearly understand what problem you're solving for your client, and that's what Jeanine and Brad know, they understand their client avatars, they understand the problem they're solving. So then they understand what they have to shoot in order to sell. And I think it's critical that you eliminate the idea that more is better. More can be overwhelming. And, you know, it's not, I don't know where I'm going with this, but it's not about the products. It's about the photographs that are created that are a reminder that the client's problem has been solved in those products. And a lot of the time, you know, we see challenges where either one, people think more is better, or two, they don't understand that they're solving a problem with their photography, or three, that it's all about them and their style and their art and their artwork. And if you make it about that, then you're never going to sell.
Brad, this whole business thing sounds all really complicated to me. So you're telling me now that I don't only have to learn how to market my business, I only have to know how to be able to sell what I do to my clients and make a difference to them. I don't only have to know all the financial numbers that wrap around that. But now the one thing I thought I could do, being a photographer, you tell me I possibly need to rethink that as to how I'm doing this. Talk to us, Brad, about how you approach this, because you're in boudoir, right? Completely different photography business to Jeanine. So this concept of shooting to sell, just talk to us about your journey as a boudoir studio around that, and how do you organize it, and how do you manage it, and how does all that fit together?
Wonderful question, Ronan, and I will answer it, I do promise you, but I'm just going to ramble for a little moment because I've got quite a few thoughts. My first thought is that I think, in fact, no, that'll be my second thought. My first thought, I've got several here, is that business is essentially three things that you've just said. It's can you market the thing, can you sell it, and then can you deliver? The marketing and sales is separate. This is just the product delivery. So then that product delivery, if you can do all three of those things, then you can build a business that's six figures. To really turn that or grow that business, you need to be able to know how to do that consistently. And that's what Jeanine does. That's what we do in my own studio. That's what all the most successful photographers, and by successful photographers, I don't mean award-winning photographers or the best photographers. I mean photographers that actually earn good income from taking photographs and serving their clients. All the best photographers are highly consistent. Which brings me to my second thought, is that I think you would make a fantastic photographer, Ronan. I would actually love for you to have like a crash course in how to work a camera, because that's really, you just have a little crash course on it, and then show you some photographs or like a style lookbook, and then let you photograph 2 dozen clients, and then see what happens. Because I think you have the skill sets that make great photographers, because you're consistent. You know, you have those same characteristics that my father has, that Jeanine has, that a whole host of other successful photographers I know have, in that you might not be the most technically gifted, you might not understand light, but you're personable, and you have the ability to be able to do something and just repeat the process and just keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. And the only variable that's really changing is the people that are in front of you. Because when you're in studio, that's kind of what you have to do. That's what we mean by shoot to sell. You're shooting for product. When you're shooting for product, you have to make sure that you're aligned with what your client wants. But ultimately, when you're in studio, you need to photograph so that it will fit into products, you will fit into an album, so you can sell that story. I think you'd nail that. And it is a process, and it is about being consistent. And I know if you're a photographer listening to that, then that can sound dull and boring.
I was just about to say, Brad, because apart from you just calling me dull and boring, thank you for that.
You're very welcome.
Because I'm going to be quiet at home with that. I am actually a creative first, but I'm a creative in a different way. I'm not a creative with a camera. I'm a creative as a thinker and a strategist and that area. So let's say though that I am a photographer, right? And I am systematic and I am disciplined and I do discover what my client needs and the problem I'm solving with photography, and I do that, right? And I deliver that for a client. But because I'm also a creative, I'm bored, right? Doing the same. It's not the same thing because everyone is different, right? But if I'm photographically doing the same thing, right? Even though my subject is different, right? How do I deal with that? How do I deal with that desire to do something photographically, creatively that's different and still be consistent?
So I might have a very controversial opinion here. But if photography is your job and your business, technically when you're serving a client, it's not your job to be creative. Because that creative fulfills your need. It doesn't fulfill the client's needs or wants. So it's your job when you have that camera, when you have a client in front of you, to deliver what the client wants. So if you want to be creative with your photography, or you've gotten into photography because you love it as a hobby and you want to earn money from it, and you think you can just be that creative photographer with clients, then you will struggle, because you're not going to have a set process in order to create consistent artwork that sells. Something my dad said to me years ago, and I've probably been a teenager at the time, and we were having school photographs done, and one of my classmates made a comment saying that school photographer is probably better than my dad at taking pictures, just trying to throw some shade at me. So I went home and told my dad, and my dad's answer to me was, "It probably is." I can near guarantee that on a day he can take a better photograph than I can. But he can't do it consistently 5 days a week, 6 days a week, serving 25 clients. I've beat him there. I'm confident he'll take a photograph better than anything I could ever do, but he's never going to do it consistently. And that was always my dad's mental model and mode. I didn't really realize it at the time, but that's always stuck in my head, and I've always remembered that exchange I had with him. And it just makes so much more sense as I've got more into the business and I've seen more successful photographers, is that it's a job first. You're delivering to your clients more than it is a hobby, more than it is a thing that you're going to get your creativity out of. So I would serve clients first. And if you want to be creative, then do that in your own time. Go enter print competition, because that's kind of what print competition exists for you to be creative and allow yourself to be creative, but don't let that muddle in with your business and serving your clients and delivering to them.
I can see Jeanine biting at the bit to come in on that and say, I disagree totally, Brad. I disagree totally, Brad.
You so long for us to argue. He does. I think he gins it up. He wants us to fight. But I actually agree with Brad to a certain extent. Clients, if you're producing a product, if you're producing sessions, if you're marketing your sessions and you're marketing a specific look, that's what your client is booking. They're expecting their child, their family, their lady friend, whatever, to come in and have what they've seen of them. And I've had it happen to us before. We've now gotten into the habit of asking our clients specifically what they've seen online that we've done that they love. Because I'll tell you, we had it happen 2 weeks ago. The mom didn't tell us. And at the end, we created a beautiful first birthday series for her. And she said, "Oh, we never did where the baby held the O, the N, and the E. We just had them hold it all together. I really like that one you did online." I'm like, ugh, And so it's they see what you produce and they want that for themselves. And so it doesn't matter if you get creative and go off book if you're not producing what they came for. So I totally agree with Brad. And everything that we do in session is exactly what we say that we're going to do. The only thing I would say is, and sometimes we'll do this, I get my creativity a couple different ways, but at the end of a session, when I know I've gotten everything that client wants, not a first birthday session, obviously, once we've done cake and bath, we're done, but other types of sessions. Once I've gotten everything I need for the story or everything I know the client has come for, I might say, you know what, Jonathan, we've gotten everything we need. We can stop right now and we have everything. But I have this crazy idea and I would just love to try it. Everybody's still happy. Are you with me for another 5 minutes if I try something different? And sometimes they'll be like, yeah, let's do it. Or like, no, we're done. And I always joke that I need to get a shirt that says just one more. Because oftentimes I'll say, can we just get one more? And that's where we'll sometimes do something a little creative or a little different at the very end of a session. Sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes it does. But I've let the client know, we got everything you want. We're done. I just want to try something. And if it works. And so a lot of times clients are on board with that. And that's something I would judge by the client. And if they're done, they're done. I would never even ask the question. And I don't often do it. Sometimes I just get inspired to do so. But never until we have everything they want done and canned and ready to go. The way I get my creativity, and this is, is designing different types of sets. And that's how I do it, because I'm always trying to come up with new ideas for what we're going to photograph outside our evergreen, right? Our evergreen being our first birthdays. So what types of themes can I shoot? What set can I design for next year? What can I predict is going to be coming down the pipeline? What am I going to do for Christmas next year? What am I going to do for Easter? That's how I get creative. And so I get creative and I feed that creative beast by coming up with what we're going to do next year and then creating the stories to go along with it. And then once I've created that story, that's what we shoot. And everybody gets the same thing. And so you can tap into your creativity in different ways, but never, like Brad said, do you use your creativity about you and not deliver to the client what they've come for.
So for an example then of that for you then is what you did with your Think Pink this year. You saw a theme, you worked on it for a number of months, and it was the creation of that whole thing that gave you your creativity, or satisfied that creativity itch that you had.
Yes. And then, I brought in a girl to come try out all the different sets. We used her to figure out the story we were going to tell. All right, what poses do we need to get a collage? What poses do we need to get what scene is going to work best for a wall portrait? And how much variety do we need to sell an album? And so brought in a model per se. It was, one of my photographer's daughters, brought her in and we played for like 2 hours with different outfits, different sets to come up with the story we wanted to tell. Once we designed that story, that's what everybody got. Because that's the only way you're going to be able to repeat it for 45, 50 people. If you think that in a half an hour, you're going to have time to think and get creative with each of your clients, no, but they don't want you to do that. You're showing a book, you're showing a collage. That's what they want for their daughter. This is what they are Think Pink. Oh, this is what they're doing at Cloud9 for these pink sessions. I want that for my daughter. And if you produce something different, you've kind of let that client down because they're coming for something specific.
So I can see Brad deeply
I know, now Brad's deep in thought. He's going to come back. What's he going to say?
The whole conversation, when he puts his head back and he stares to the sky, there's something big coming.
I know, he's really thinking now. Oh, his eyes went to the ceiling again. This is fantastic.
I don't know what my opinion is. I suppose that's always very dangerous, isn't it? When I actually don't know where I'm going to go with this. Because I have heard what Janine's point, I've heard many, many, many times. Like it was what we had in studio for years, is that you serve client and then at the end you do your own little creative piece. And I'm just battling myself in my own head on where I actually sit with that. Because for years I've always been exactly in that camp of, serve your client and then allow yourself to be creative at the end. And then now all I'm thinking in my head is, who does that serve? Does that serve you or does that serve the client?
And that's I'm delighted that I've found a little clink in Jeanine and Brad's alignment on something. So I want to deep dive into this. There's a little clink, right? And if you asked me for my opinion right now, I would go with your thought process, Brad, on it. Because I think that the minute you allow come into your brain that it's about you and not your client, that you're opening up that door to allow that take over your brain.
Which is where it's scary. That's quite scary, that, isn't it, Ronan? You know, get out of my head. But yeah, that was my thought process. I didn't really think that until right now, because I've always thought it that, you know, you were allowed to be creative at the end of your session. But it's Seth Godin, right? I'm saying his name right. You shared a post in our members group about something he said about creating a business out of a hobby and hobbyists, and that photography is is, you know, like a prime example of a hobbyist business. You know, it tends to be a lot of people love photography, then they get into photography because they love it, and my brain's just whirring thinking, well, that creative element does that doing that creative at the end of the session, does that actually hold you back from creating a business, or does that still sit you in not like the hobbyists camp, but I'm doing photography for me rather than I'm doing photography for client? And I'm just thinking of, if you're going to scale that and build that much more consistent, because it's quite easy doing it when it's just my team and it's just Jeanine's team. But if it was going to be a bigger team than that, how would you manage that? It is where my head's just wandered off to.
And it's interesting, and I know, Jeanine, you want to come back on this, and you're not disagreeing, you're actually aligned, but just slightly different processes. But I do
I love
really,
how he tells me what I'm thinking, but that's okay.
Because something just hit me as Brad was talking there, right? And it's something where you see companies like Google and the tech companies doing, right, where they allow their programmers that you can have a project that's totally unrelated to the business, right? And we will allocate X amount of time for that, but not while you're doing your job that you're paid for in Google to do. So we might contract you for a 40-hour week, right? But we're going to set aside 2 hours a week for you to work on your project, which means that for the other 38 hours, you're working on the stuff, right? You're working on for the Google clients, right? To make Google better. And that allows the programmers then to work on a project. And they found that it actually works to a positive benefit to both the individual and to Google. Because sometimes on working these special projects, the programmer discovers something new that could be relevant to Google clients that Google never thought about. I actually think Gmail actually came out of that. That it was a program. I think there's so many stories anyway where that came out of, and I'm sort of wondering. I'm thinking out loud now. I haven't thought this through. I'm wondering is what Brad is talking about and what you're talking about the same, Jeanine, but different. So it's the same in that when you're working for your client, it should just be about your client, and just park all that creative desire you have, but create in your schedule time to be creative as a photographer if that's what you want. And as Brad suggests, that time, that it's not with a paying client, right? It's with somebody who volunteers if you need somebody to be creative. That's when you're going about to be creative. And if you want to get validation for that creativity, well then they're the images you work on that you enter into print competition or whatever.
So, okay, I can agree and I can disagree a little bit. If I'm thinking of like family sessions or sessions that aren't involving cake. We don't get very creative with that. We just kind of finish it. But I will tell you, a lot of family sessions we do are high school seniors that we do. High school seniors specifically, like especially outdoors. It's all creative. I mean, you're following them around on safari and photographing as you see things, and as you're kind of in the moment and you're working with that person and you're creating some interesting work with them. But when you're like, if I have a family in the studio, I'll go through all of my normal poses, my normal interactions, tell that story for the family. And then a lot of times at the end, like sometimes I think as photographers, we get stuck in specific things. A lot of my new favorite poses that I come up with at the end. I'm like, you know what? Everyone's still happy. I got an idea. Let's try this. And I'll move the couch a different way. I'll pose people a different way. I'll get kids up on the couch. I'll have them do this. And then we do that. And it ends up becoming an awesome pose for that family. And then I'm like, you know what? I'm going to bank that in my head. And I'm going to do that with my next families because that actually worked out really cool. And it becomes part of the script, I guess, that you say that we use in our family sessions. I don't think that would necessarily come in a staged session, perchance. I don't think I could bring a family in and be like, hey, I need to bring a family in to figure out a whole bunch of different poses. I don't think that would work as well. I think it has to be an in the moment. When you're in your session, you get this feeling with a specific family to try something new. You got everything you need. You know what? I just want to try another pose. I'm going to try another chair. I'm going to try this. I'm going to try that because like I'm feeling it with you. And this is like a gut. And it's like I said, we don't do it all the time because sometimes like kids, people are just done. But when you're in that and you're feeling it and like, I'm just going to try this. And then it ends up being something that we use for everybody else because it worked or it didn't work. And you know what? Okay, well, it didn't work. And then we laugh about it, you know, and that, you know, I'm like, okay, that was a really bad idea. We'll just stick with my other ones. And people usually laugh about it and it makes the whole process very real. And then when they get into the sales appointment, when they're, you know, viewing and ordering their pictures and their portraits and choosing what they want, sometimes I'll leave in the failure and everybody gets a good laugh. And I've actually sold it sometimes too. Like it was a failure in my mind, but they still thought it was pretty funny. They liked being part of the process. So I don't know. I agree and I disagree. I don't ever do it necessarily for me. It's more for how I can find better ideas for that client and for future clients. And so I'm kind of trying to step outside the box a little bit because I'm telling you, when you photograph the same thing all the time, you get in a rut and you get it. And yes, you gotta produce the portraits that people are coming for, but then you gotta add something in every now and then or it gets stale. And then you'll have, you know, a client that has children of different heights and sizes and ages, and you need something else in your bank of poses to go to. So I don't know. I agree and I disagree. I think that there is room in a session to try something new. And I don't think it has to be a selfish thing for the photographer. I think it can be for that client. It can be for your future clients. And I think it's easier to do in session for things like that than it would be to bring in a complete model just to test around. The models are for creating something completely new. You know, like like I said, when we start a new set, I'll bring someone in and test it all out to try and get the idea of the story that we're going to tell. But if I'm just trying to figure out like a different prop or a different pose or different like that, I just do that in session and just kind of go with it. As long as I have everything that I need.
Jeanine, I know you're in Tampa, right? But by any chance are you from New York?
Me? Yes, you know I'm from New York.
It's very hard to stop you talking. So, Jonathan, you are
now all the New Yorkers are going to come on our podcast comments and be like, did Ronan just diss Jeanine because she's from New York?
Jonathan, we've never had this scenario before on the podcast where there was a little bit of light of disagreement between Brad and Jeanine, even though there's just a little bit of light. There is a little bit of light of a difference. So you are going to be the judge today, Jonathan. You are going to let us know who you think, if we can only choose one of the two options, Brad's option or Jeanine's option, which one you would go with if you were a photographer. Before you do that, Jonathan, right, I want you to tell everybody about the Mifki and how they can avail of our Mifki, and then you can reveal who you've chosen to go with, Brad or Jeanine.
The Mifki is incredible. What on earth is the Mifki? The Mifki stands for Most Incredible Free Gift Ever. So, what does that mean? It means that we are giving you a Mifki. We're giving you the most incredible free gift ever. See, we've identified 3 key success factors that photographers need to be successful at being consistently fully booked with high-paying clients. the first thing they need a marketing strategy that works. And we know the marketing strategy that we teach at the Fully Booked Photographer works not only because of our members, but our mentors implemented and executed successfully every single day. The second thing is access to expert coaching and mentorship, because with anything in life, you face obstacles, you face challenges, and having access to a mentor or a coach can help you overcome those obstacles and challenges. And the third thing to keep you going is you need community. You need support through community. You need to be able to talk to other people who are in your shoes. You need to be able to have access to the mentors. And we want to give you those three things for free.
Hold on a second. For free?
So we're giving you those things for free, lifetime access for free, when you say maybe and you test drive the AI-powered Fully Booked engine and subscribe to a free 30-day trial of the engine. So the AI-powered Fully Booked engine is the best software platform on the planet for photographers who are serious about running a successful photography business. It's going to help with your marketing. It's going to help with your sales. It's going to help with your client communications, your nurturing, managing your studio. And we believe that when you test drive it for 30 days for free, that you will fall in love with it and will never want to use any other software ever again. And that is why we have that little bribe for you, that we're giving you access to the course, the coaching, and the community. Lifetime access for free when you just test drive the AI-powered Fully Booked engine for 30 days.
So I don't even have to commit. I don't even have to say yes. I just have to say maybe, right?
Just have to say maybe. Give it 30 days.
All right. So to get that, guys, all you have to do is click on the link below and it'll bring you to the page to get that MIF key. Just do it. Just press the button and do it. So Jonathan, now is the time to reveal who, if you were to pick Brad or Jeanine and their strategy, are you going with?
I have to carefully consider my answer. I was going to say I plead the fifth. I was going to say I declined to comment. And then I was going to tell the truth and say I was half listening to what they were both saying on this podcast. So I can't make a proper decision. I'm going to go with Jeanine.
Jonathan, I love you.
Talk about sitting on the fence and not making a decision. So I'm absolutely brutally honest with these things. So on this occasion, I'm going with Brad. So seeing as Jonathan would not have the vote, I think there is great merit in what you both said. But on this occasion, I'm afraid of that little creep into the mind and taking over the mind, that it's about you as the photographer and not the client. So on that note, I'm now in trouble with Jeanine, but we will get over it.
You're entitled to your own opinion. You could be wrong, but
and we thank you for joining us in this podcast. We really look forward to seeing you on the next one. And don't forget to check out the MIF key. Just click below. See you soon. Bye for now.